I'm very excited about the Beat Berkshires this year. I mean, first of all, who doesn't want to summer in the Berkshires? So it's a little opportunity for us to take a couple days away. And for those of us in the tri-state, a drive, not a fly. So look, every Beat event is always different from the next, but one thing that remains consistent is the collection of folks, the casting directors at Beat, doing an excellent job bringing together an amazing cast from around the industry. I'm really looking forward to seeing folks that I have known for many years, but haven't been able to catch up with in a while, and I'm sure many feel the same way. It's also an opportunity for folks to get to know one another in an intimate setting that doesn't always happen in the day-to-day kind of ins and outs of working in this industry. So just the general intimacy of the setting in the Berkshires with Beat, bringing together folks from all across the industry, whether it's tech partners, agencies, brands, commerce partners. It's a fantastic group. The other thing is, Beat does an incredible job just setting a tone of candor. The Chatham House rules element of what we have always invites some healthy debate, spurs dialogue that we might not be comfortable having in other settings, and it offers an opportunity for us to get comfortably uncomfortable when we're talking about things that are happening and evolving in our industry. And I think that's important. Like, we need to be able to have some safe spaces to challenge ourselves and challenge each other on what's going on. But if the safe space can also be in the Berkshires, that's like win-win. So really, really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fantastic week, and it's in large part due to the people that are here. The human connection of our industry is always the best part. We don't get anywhere without the people we know.
Mike, one of the big challenges that the industry has been facing lately, and I'm sure a big topic that will come up a lot at the Beat Berkshires, is agentic AI. Wanted to get your thoughts on what are the conversations that you're hoping to have about how AI agents will reshape media buying, optimization, and the relationship between buyers and sellers.
Yeah, gosh, it has been probably the most rapidly evolving important topic that I can recall ever happening in our industry, the topic of agentic AI and how it's kind of reframing how we approach our businesses. This industry moves very quickly, but the macro trends of agentic and AI and the infrastructure behind it are pushing us, I think, faster and further than we even know how to run. And so what you see is, I was actually reading back at some notes from CES that had introduced like this ad CP thing and how should we be thinking about it, and this brand new concept. And in 6 short months, we've gone from conception and figuring something out to actual tangible activation, testing, and learning. We see a broad spectrum of readiness from both our supply and sell side partners and our buy side partners in terms of how people are approaching agentic. But we do know it is actively reframing and reshaping how we think, plan, buy, optimize, measure, report. And that spectrum will continue to evolve because I think each company and each organization has a different kind of rite of passage into how they use it and how it works with one another. In terms of how we're thinking about it at Magnite, our DNA has always been in sort of interoperability, optionality, flexibility. So we are not necessarily in a place where we want to push anybody to activate or use our buyer agent only or in a certain way. We want flexibility to bring whatever technology or choice you have to the table, which is why Magnite launched our orchestration layer right around Cannes, which is very simply the sort of opportunity for buyers and sellers and their agents to come together and do that decisioning, the planning, the reporting, the activation, all in the infrastructure that we provide that's been built on top of the SpringServe ad server technology. Why that's important is I think everybody wants to kind of have their own model and have their own choice, and our job is to ensure that happens and it happens efficiently. Folks are going to bring their own buyer agent from the buy side, or they can license someone else's or ours. Whatever you want to do, we just want to provide the best supply footprint and best technology to enable that to happen. And so as this third rail of agentic advertising kind of gets stood up next to programmatic and direct IO, we want to approach it the same way we approach these other areas. The other thing that I think has been almost as common of a discussion point as AI and the technology itself and agents is the human in the loop piece of this too, which I think all of us probably share sentiment that needs to continue to be a really important part of oversight into how all of this new workflow and these new standards are being set up. You still need somebody with context. You still need somebody with taste, and you still need somebody with risk management potentially to look after and oversee this agentic activation layer. So the other thing we're always thinking about at Magnite is how to build for both. I think that you can look at AI may know how to play all the instruments, but you still need a conductor, and that conductor needs to know when to start, when to stop, when to pause and let things breathe, and then when to compose. So that is certainly the job of all of us as we continue to embrace this technology and apply it to our day-to-day.
Mike, commerce media continues to evolve outside of retail media's shadow. At the same time, CTV is becoming more of an essential part of the story. How do you see commerce media and CTV coming together to create better experiences for consumers and for stronger outcomes for advertisers?
Yeah, it's been a really exciting development to see commerce media and CTV coming together. At Magnite, we've had a number of commerce partners lean in to get closer to the supply and kind of marry the strengths of each company. I think what makes it exciting, let's start with CTV as a medium. It's one of the fastest growing channels across our advertising and media industry for a reason. It's taking the big screen where it's always been the best place, the best canvas to tell stories, and allowing you to reach it at scale in ways that are more targetable and more specific and more intentional. And you marry that with commerce data that can bring in a number of high intent signals across a number of different industries and help cut through some of the sort of the legacy way of targeting TV, which is just audience and reach, and get down to specifics to drive an outcome both offline or in store and measure it. For example, if you're an apparel company, instead of just spraying and praying, you can now target and measure your ability to reach high intent shoppers and see what that did in terms of offline or online sales afterwards. I think it's incredibly powerful and something that's always been reserved for more native digital that is now being applied to, I think, the most important canvas of all, which is the big screen and the TV. And so with Magnite, we believe that the closer you are to that supply, that amazing supply that is represented by CTV, the more powerful the signal is, and the better the outcome will be. And so we've seen just a lot of exciting partnerships in the commerce and CTV space, and we're happy to kind of be at the epicenter of that with them.
Mike, we've been seeing a shift from impressions to measurable business outcomes for quite some time. What do you think still needs to happen for buyers and sellers to fully align around outcome-based advertising, particularly when it comes to CTV?
Yeah, it's been a challenge that we've had in our industry since I started in it. I don't know if it's one that we'll be able to solve everywhere across all mediums, really ever. But look, brands are being asked, marketers are being asked by their CFOs to ensure that their marketing investment, their media investment produces bottom line business outcomes. And so that responsibility needs to fall on all of us as agencies, as partners, as vendors, to help them achieve those bottom line business goals. So media metrics are a means to an end, but it's certainly not the end. And it's hard because this industry is fragmented. You have you have data, measurement, and attribution sitting in all these different places. You have KPIs for companies that are bespoke to their businesses. So there's just not a standardization, and it sits across a fragmented ecosystem with walled gardens here, hedged gardens there, open internet here. And so you have to just do what you can do and meet the customer where they are. How Magnite is leaning into this, and we are making a very intentional push into measurable outcomes beyond just the media metric. Really are two focus areas. The first is identity resolution. Being able to ingest data and match audiences and data sets closer to the supply, which we sit upstream the transaction, should help increase, and we see it helping increase match rates, increase signal fidelity, and that quality in leads to quality out. You can't measure anything that you don't have the signal on. You can only model off of so much data. So being able to get that identity resolution and improve matching on the front end, which allows us to measure in any way necessary on the back end, is step one. Step two, in terms of the measurement and attribution front. We built a conversion API, which can be bespoke to pretty much any conversion event, online or offline, depending on what the customer's needs are. And so we're excited to roll that out this quarter in Q3. We're taking some brand direct and agency partners in to test and learn with us. And again, those two combinations are what we need to do, and it is all attached to our connected TV inventory. So it is a CTV specific effort, and we want to be one of the first, if not the first, to help solve this problem, at least for that channel, for the industry. One watch out I would say is, TV has traditionally been a place to measure audience and reach, and so the expectation that that same medium will be the most efficient driver of outcomes in a same session online conversion, I think is probably a stretch. But to have some sort of evidence that it is an effective medium to drive action, I think is what the industry wants and needs. And I think if we start there, we'll see that it really is, but we'll be able to tell the story a bit more effectively.
Mike, for this last one, I was hoping you could tie together the tandem rise of AI, commerce media, and CTV. Where specifically do you think Magnite is uniquely positioned to help shape what's next across those three areas?
Yeah, we're just ready for AI agents to be using commerce media to tap right into the best CTV inventory you can find anywhere. It should be able to happen by the end of this conference, I think. Right, everybody? Okay. In all seriousness, Magnite sits at this really unique kind of epicenter of sellers and publishers, buyers, agencies, brands, ecosystem partners like commerce media, and that affords us the ability to kind of identify trends, spot gaps that we need to fill in the industry, and partners across the board will come to us and ask us what we're seeing and why and what's happening, and it does allow us to build more quickly and work more flexibly with all of the partners across the ecosystem as things come together. And that convergence of AI, commerce, and CTV is like one example of many. Our DNA has always been independent, interoperable, flexible, and we want to service our customers across all cohorts as best we can. So, our ask is just continue to come build with us. That's what we want, and that's what we're able to do. It's what we're equipped to do. And AI, commerce, and CTV is just one part and one example of how that can come together.